Okay, class, this week, what you're gonna work on is, usually when it's not COVID time, you would teach a lesson to students to come in, but of course, we couldn't do that this semester. So what you're going to do is, you're going to create your own lesson plan template using the test model, and you're going to teach it next week. And it says via video, but you're going to teach it live in class. I'm going to video you, and then you're going to be able to watch it later. And it's really good to watch yourself when you are teaching lessons, because you really get a grasp on, do I talk too quickly? Do I not allow wait time? All of those things. So this is a great time for you to try out something. This is the nest, remember, this is the safe zone, and I want you to have an opportunity to practice in front of peers and practice in front of a camera, so you can watch yourself to see what habits you have and things like that you can work on before you go into your other methods courses. So remember, you're going to choose a standard from Johnny Key's website, the DESE website, and then remember the hook and the GRR lesson plan. I do, we do, y'all do, you do. So let's look at the parts of the lesson plan. Now, here's the deal with it. You are not going to be able to teach an hour-long lesson because of time, and I've never missed this much in a semester either. But because of time and things like that, we're not going to be able to do a full lesson. But I want you to do it individually. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a complete lesson plan as if you have an hour to teach a lesson. And then all you will do is pick 10 minutes of it. And it can be 10 minutes that you abbreviate the I do and the we do part. But just a snapshot of your lesson. You're going to write the complete lesson, but you're only going to teach 10 minutes of it. You're going to say, okay guys, this is the lesson plan, and what I hope to do is to have you share the lesson plans after I give you feedback, and they're really, really good. We're going to share them on the discussion board so you can see everybody else's lesson plans. I didn't want you to teach it in groups of 2 or 3 because I want you to be responsible for yours instead of just sitting back and letting somebody else, or if there's not somebody in your class that teaches your particular subject area, you can choose your own. So let's say that I'm doing a lesson on 5th grade dividing fractions, let's say. And so I would have the complete lesson plan written, but then I would say to y'all, okay class, you're 5th graders today, and we're going to do it on dividing fractions. I'm going to pretend like you are, and let's start it right now. And so with this, I might bring in a pizza or some kind of activity for us to do for the I do, and I'm going to go through that for like 4 minutes. And then I'm going to say, and now we're going to do, and I'm still treating you as if you're 5th graders, I'd like everybody to go along with me. And then maybe the last minute or 2, I would say, and after this activity, we would go into working in groups and then the other. But make sure that you've got 10 minutes of the lesson of you teaching it. So practice this, do it with a timer, and practice what portion of the lesson that you plan to do. You don't necessarily have to share everything that you're going to do later, because we will be sharing our lesson plans with one another. So let's go through the parts of the lesson plan now. I will give you feedback on it so that way you know that what you're doing, you're on the right track. So, the subject, let's say you were going to do 5th grade division of fractions. So subject would be math. Grade level, what did I say, 5th grade or 4th grade? 5th grade. And then overall concept, division of fractions. Objective, so remember, it is the students will so they can. So the students will divide fractions so they can create a recipe, or so that they can create, let's just say they can create a recipe. The standard, it would be math.5.1a, let's say. And division of fractions, for fifth graders. Whatever the standard says, you write out the complete standard and the words that go after it so that you can see everything that you're supposed to teach. And why have you chosen these goals? Well, think about that. Division of fractions. Well, I know that students are going to divide fractions for the rest of their lives in many forms in real life. They're going to, when they're shopping, when they're cooking, etc. And also, it is an Arkansas Framework Standard for fifth grade that is scoped and sequenced in all of their curriculum. So it's a part of the frameworks, and you might even say this is a skill they'll use in real life when they're cooking and shopping, whatever. But I want to know why you've chosen the goals. And it shouldn't be just because the standards say so. Also tell something in real life. Methods. What teaching methods will you use for the lesson? And on this, you are not going to just say what you're going to do for your 10-minute snapshot. This is what teaching methods will you use if you were pretending like you were doing a real lesson for an hour. So I would probably do maybe some think, pair, share, because the students are going to talk to each other. I'm going to have some direct instruction. That's going to be me lecturing just a bit. I'm going to do some, I might do a gallery walk where I look to see how other people solve the math problem. I might do a cooperative learning group, just depending on what I want to do. This is where I would write what teaching methods I would use. Then describe the examples you will use to aid in student understanding. And you know, it's always important that you have the students to do something. So in this case, I might bring in Unifix cubes or a cardboard pizza or something so they can look at fractions and division of fractions. So that's where I would say I would bring in pizza to share some real life example of the division of fractions. I might bring in Unifix cubes, I might bring in whatever, and just kind of talk about how that's going to help them to better visualize the division of fractions. And why have you chosen this method or these methods? Well, I know that when I'm doing direct instruction, it's good to be individuals so that way they're focusing on me rather than their peers. When we're doing guided practice, I want them working in groups so that way they can give feedback to one another, because peer tutoring really does help and they can check each other on it. I know the gallery walk is a good method to use, because when the students are looking at other lessons or examples, they're using it to reflect and to think about their own ways that they solve the problem. So just tell me why you've chosen each of the methods that you did, and just give me a little blurb about why you think that's the best. It does seem like overkill, but like I said, when you first started learning to drive a car, it was very regimented of why do you do this? Why do you set the mirror? Why do you do this? Why do you make sure your hands are at 10 and 2? It's very, it feels very overkill, but it's not, because when you're going through these now, it will help you so that you can do it almost naturally later. But there is a lot that goes into each lesson. So why have you chosen these methods? And when and how will you check for understanding? It's very important that as a teacher, you see me walking around and monitoring when you're talking in groups and seeing who's getting it, who's not. I find that when I've got a bunch of classes and a lot of students, using some kind of checklist or app where I can say, oh, Kimberly got it. Oh, Sarah didn't, so I'm going to put an X there, because I guarantee you when class is over with, I'm not going to remember who got it, who didn't, just off the top of my head. So using some kind of checklist also helps me to know who was getting that content and who wasn't. So I'll do teacher observation and constant questioning. I'm also, perhaps I'll have a checklist so that I can record who got the skill and who did not, to help me for future reference. Then I want you to write at least one question for each level of Bloom's taxonomy. Remember, it's knowledge, comprehension, application analysis, evaluation, and synthesis. And so for the division of fractions, I want you to come up with a question at each level of Bloom's taxonomy. Why? Because when you are actually teaching a lesson like this, it's so often you'll just stay in that knowledge comprehension level or the remembering or understanding level, and you won't move into those higher levels. So it's always good to have a question so that way you have a reference point to move from. When and how will you encourage students to extend their thinking to higher levels? Well, on this, you might think, well, John knows how to divide fractions, so I might get him to multiply fractions or do something else with it to the next step. If he already knows how to do this, you might give him higher numbers, or you might give this group that already knows how to do that, how are you going to differentiate to challenge them in some way? And what resources will you need? If you need a cardboard pizza or Unifix cubes or dry erase boards and markers, whatever you need, that's where you'll write it there. Then the next section is, how are you going to group your students for instruction? Well, I would say during the I do section, or the hook, I might have them sitting at individual desks. Then for the working on the we do and the y'all do, I'm going to have them work in groups of 3. Then in the you do, I'm going to have them go back to individual desks or something like this. So, and then you're going to tell me, how are you going to group them and why have you chosen this? Well, for the I do, I want to make sure that they're giving me their full attention. And then on the we do and y'all do, I want them working in groups because it's peer tutoring and helping one another. So always give me a reason why you have chosen it, because there's a reason. This is your lesson. You tell me why you've chosen each method, not just because, well, that's what the book suggested, or that's what I found on betterlesson.com. I want to know reasons why. There needs to be justifications of everything you do in a lesson. Then on this section, you're going to talk about the activities that you're going to teach. And so like on this, I might say, this isn't the 10-minute, remember the lesson plan is the long form. So I might say my activities, first I'm going to do X, and that's going to take 20 minutes. 2, I'm going to do this one, and it's going to take 5 minutes. 3, this, and it's 10. So all the different activities, you're going to write them here as you go through the lesson. Then what kind of guided practice you're going to do. And that's, I mean, you can even have it up here too. This is just as, it seems repetitive, but it's also just reminding you what kind of guided practice that we do. So on this one, I'm going to have the students break up their pizza along with me of how to divide the fractions or how to divide the pieces. And then how will you monitor students' work? I'm going to be continually asking questions. I'll be using a checklist, and I'll also be walking around as they're working in peer groups. Will you have an independent activity at the end? Is there something that they're going to do on their own without peer support? Are you going to have them do an activity? This is where you'll write it and the time allotted. How does the method you choose prove that you've chosen the best activities and that you are a content expert? On this one, I would say something like, based on my research and looking at examples of best practice and engagement, let's say, using the GRR lesson plan, I think the I do, we do, you do is the best method. And I think that, and also by looking at lessons from betterlesson.com or another one, that I know that these are the best activities that will engage the students, that will help get the content across. And provide information in regards specifically to your students in your case and how this type of lesson provides them with the best instruction. Well, if you're in any school in this area, you're going to have some students with lower socioeconomic levels that maybe haven't had access to everything. So you can say, by using the hands-on methods that we plan to use in this lesson and using peer support, research says that this really does help even the students from lower socioeconomic levels to engage with the lesson and to learn the content. Then we're gonna get into the evaluation. How and when do you plan to evaluate student learning on the content of this lesson? Make sure that whatever your objective is, like the student will learn this or learn division of, the students will be able to divide fractions so they can create a recipe. Make sure that whatever your objective says, then that's what the assessment will be. So it's gonna be something about creating a lesson or modifying a lesson, or creating a recipe or modifying a recipe that goes along with the objective. They've got to all line up. Remember, your objective, your activities, and your assessment all need to be on the same wavelength. And then why have you chosen this approach? It needs to also be because I'm making sure that I'm evaluating what I plan to teach, and I also am teaching what it's just all alignment. So you need to make sure that whatever your evaluation is matches up, and that's why you've chosen this approach. You might also want to create a rubric. Rubrics are a great way that students can see, or you can assess students to see if they learned. And Rubistar is a great website if you want to create a rubric of some sort. So these are the parts of the lesson plan. I want you to think outside the box if you want to. Don't always necessarily be safe with it. Just kind of be thinking and using your creativity. I will help you. I'll give you feedback. There's also going to be a place where you tell me what you plan to do during your 10-minute presentation. And at the bottom, make sure that you tell me what websites you use. This lesson was adapted from betterlesson.com, and you might even put the link. And Teachers Pay Teachers, there might be the link. So it's okay to use what's online. There's great resources, but just be sure and reference them at the bottom. So we will teach, remember, we're going to teach a 10-minute snapshot next week. You're going to need to have this complete lesson plan over an hour-long lesson by Sunday, and I will give you feedback. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.